By Thanksgiving dinner, I wasn't asking whether my sister had lied about our mother's stroke anymore. I was asking how much of the $70,000 she'd taken in Mom's name. Mom sat in her wheelchair at the head of the table, and I realized the turkey wasn't the only thing about to be carved open. My name is Daniel Mercer. I was 38 that fall, living in Columbus, Ohio, working as a senior claims analyst for an insurance company that trained me to notice patterns, missing numbers, and the kind of lies people tell when they think emotion will hide the math. I did not expect to use those skills on my own sister. Our mother, Elaine Mercer, had her stroke on an ordinary Tuesday in late September. That was the cruelest part of it. The day had started with nothing dramatic. Gray sky, cold coffee, a quick text from Mom complaining that the neighbor's leaves were blowing into her yard again. By noon, she was on a kitchen floor in Dayton with one side of her body limp and her speech reduced to frightened sounds nobody could understand. I got the call from a paramedic using her phone. I still remember the way my chair scraped across the office floor when I stood up. The fluorescent lights above me felt too bright. My heart was beating so hard I could hear blood in my ears. I drove to the hospital with both hands locked on the wheel, praying at every red light, bargaining with God like a desperate child. Just let her still know my name. Let her still be here when I get there. She was alive. That was the first mercy. The second was that the stroke had been caught early enough to save her life, but not early enough to spare her from damage. Her right arm barely moved, her mouth pulled to one side. Words came out broken and slow, as if each one had to claw its way through a wall inside her head. The woman who used to host Christmas for 22 people without breaking a sweat suddenly needed help lifting a plastic cup. My sister, Vanessa, got to the hospital about 40 minutes after I did. Vanessa was 41, beautiful in that polished, expensive way that always made people assume she had her life together. Perfect hair, neutral lipstick, soft cashmere sweater. Even when she cried, she managed to look composed. Nurses leaned toward her. Doctors spoke to her first. Strangers trusted her in under 30 seconds. I used to think that was a gift. By the end of that Thanksgiving, I understood it was a weapon. In those first days, though, I was just grateful not to be alone. Our father had died 8 years earlier, and Mom had stubbornly insisted on staying in the little ranch house where they had spent most of their marriage. Vanessa lived only 20 minutes away from her. I was nearly an hour and a half out. So when the neurologist started talking about rehab, insurance authorizations, home modifications, and the reality that Mom might never fully regain her independence, I assumed Vanessa and I would do what families are supposed to do. We would divide the burden. We would protect our mother. We would tell the truth. For about a week, that almost looked possible. Vanessa brought blankets, posted cheerful updates in the family group chat, and made herself the point person for distant cousins. I handled the insurance calls, the medication lists, the appeal for additional physical therapy sessions, and the mountain of paperwork the hospital kept dropping on us like bricks. Mom drifted through it all exhausted and frightened, squeezing my hand with her left one whenever another stranger walked into the room. Sometimes she tried to speak. Sometimes all she could do was cry. Those were the moments that broke me. My mother had always been proud to the point of irritation. She ironed pillowcases. She returned library books early. She sent thank you cards for things that did not require thank you cards. Seeing her trapped inside a body that no longer obeyed her felt unbearable. And in those early weeks, every decision felt urgent. Could she return home? Should we sell the car? Would Medicare cover enough rehab? How long before the savings started bleeding out? Vanessa kept saying the same thing. We'll figure it out. What she meant, I would later realize, was something very different. The first hint came 10 days after the stroke, when a college friend texted me a screenshot and asked, "Is this your mom?" I was standing in the hospital cafeteria with a vending machine sandwich in my hand when I opened it. There was Mom's photo, not a recent hospital photo, a flattering picture Vanessa had taken the previous spring at a garden center, before the stroke, before the slump in her face, before the fear. Mom was smiling beside a rack of marigolds in a yellow cardigan. Underneath it, in bold letters, were the words, "Help Elaine walk again." The fundraiser had already passed $27,000. My stomach turned so fast I had to put the sandwich down. The description was long and dramatic. Vanessa had written it in her usual style, all swelling emotion and strategic detail. She called Mom a beloved widow abandoned by an unforgiving healthcare system. She wrote that Elaine was facing possible permanent confinement to bed unless the family could afford desperately needed private rehabilitation, home nursing, specialized equipment, and mounting unpaid medical debt. Some of that was true. Enough of it was true to be dangerous, but other parts were not. Mom was not abandoned. I had spent every spare hour at the hospital. Our insurance was difficult, but it was covering a meaningful portion of her rehab. There was no mounting unpaid debt yet because claims were still processing. And possible permanent confinement to bed was the kind of phrase designed to make strangers imagine the worst and donate before thinking. I stared at the number again. $27,412. I felt cold all over. I called Vanessa immediately. She answered on the second ring, whispering dramatically, "Daniel, I'm with Mom." "What is the GoFundMe?" A pause. Then, smooth as silk, "It's for Mom. You used her picture. You said we're drowning in medical debt. We could be. That is not what you wrote." She let out a slow breath, the way she always did when she wanted to position herself as the calm one. "Daniel, people don't donate to spreadsheets. They donate to urgency." That sentence lodged in my chest like a splinter. People don't donate to spreadsheets. I walked out into the parking lot because the cafeteria suddenly felt too small. The air smelled like wet pavement and cigarette smoke. Ambulance sirens wailed somewhere in the distance. My hand was shaking so badly I had to switch the phone to my other ear. "Did Mom approve this?" I asked. She nodded when I explained it. "You explained what exactly?" "That her friends want to help." "That is not the same thing." Vanessa's voice sharpened. "Do you want to help her or not?" "Because I'm the one here every day, Daniel. I'm the one coordinating meals, visitors, updates, equipment quotes, all of it. If people want to give, let them give." I should have pushed harder right then. I know that now. But guilt is a powerful sedative. She was closer. She was there more often during the daytime. She knew the rehab coordinator by name. I was exhausted, frightened, and trying to hold down a job while navigating forms written in language designed to confuse normal people. And a small part of me wanted to believe that even if Vanessa was being theatrical, the money would still go where it needed to go. So I told myself to watch. Just watch. Mom was transferred to an inpatient rehab center 3 days later. That was when the cracks widened. The center was clean, bright, and relentlessly cheerful in the way all rehab facilities seem to be. Motivational posters on the walls, handrails in every hallway, the smell of sanitizer and overcooked vegetables hanging in the air. Mom hated it at first. She hated needing help to stand, hated the speech exercises, hated the thickened liquids, hated the humiliation of being reminded every hour that her body had become a negotiation. Vanessa started posting daily updates online. Today, Mom took 3 steps. Today, Mom cried because she wants to come home. Today, we found out insurance won't cover what she truly needs. The donations kept climbing, 31,000, 36, 42. Comments poured in from church friends, old neighbors, people I had never heard of, praying for Elaine, sending love. Every little bit helps. One woman donated $5,000 and wrote, "No one should suffer like this." Every time I saw those messages, something in me tightened. Because while Vanessa was posting those updates, she had stopped answering basic questions from me. How much had been withdrawn? Where was it going? Had she opened a separate account? Had she paid the wheelchair supplier yet? What about the bathroom grab bar installation quote? She always had an answer, but never a number. "Things are being handled. I'm keeping track. Can we not do this in front of Mom?" That last one was her favorite because it made me sound cruel for asking. Then came the receipts, or rather, the lack of them. One Saturday, I met Vanessa in Mom's empty house to look at what modifications would be needed before discharge. The place smelled stale, like dust and untouched furniture. Dad's recliner was still in the corner. Mom's reading glasses still sat on the side table beside a half-finished crossword. Afternoon light came through the blinds in thin bars, making the whole house feel paused, like it was waiting for its owner to return as herself. Vanessa was in the kitchen, tapping at her phone. I asked for the rehab payment breakdown. She rolled her eyes without looking up. You really know how to pick your moments. It's not about moments. It's about transparency. It's about control. She snapped. You hate that people come to me first. I laughed then. I could not help it. It burst out sharp and humorless. Vanessa, I do not care who they come to first. I care that strangers have donated over $40,000 in Mom's name, and I have not seen a single invoice you've actually paid. She looked up slowly, and in that moment I saw something I had not wanted to see before. Not stress, not grief. Annoyance. The annoyance of a person being inconvenienced while running a scam she thinks is justified. She smiled after a second, but it came too late. Fine, she said. I'll put everything together before Thanksgiving. Happy? No, I wasn't. And standing there in our mother's dim kitchen with the old fridge humming and my pulse thudding in my neck, I realized something that made my skin go cold. I wasn't waiting for proof that my sister was lying anymore. I was waiting to find out how big the lie really was. Thanksgiving was 3 weeks away. That became the date in my head, a silent deadline. Vanessa had thrown it out like a bone to keep me quiet, but once she said it, I held on to it. Before Thanksgiving, she would put everything together. Before Thanksgiving, I would either feel ashamed for doubting my own sister, or I would finally see the shape of what she had been doing behind all those tearful social media posts. Deep down, I already knew which one it would be. Mom stayed in rehab longer than the doctors first predicted. Progress came, but it came in cruel little inches. One shaky transfer from bed to chair, a few more words that didn't slur into each other, the ability to lift a spoon with her left hand without crying from frustration. Every time I visited, I saw two versions of her fighting for space in the same body. There was the mother I knew, sharp, observant, proud. And then there was the exhausted patient who drifted off in the middle of a sentence and looked embarrassed every time an aide helped her to the bathroom. She hated pity. That was what made Vanessa's fundraiser feel even filthier. One afternoon, I found Mom sitting in the rehab lounge by the window, a fleece blanket over her lap, watching dry leaves skitter across the parking lot. The television on the wall was playing some daytime talk show nobody was really watching. The room smelled like powdered soup and disinfectant. Her speech therapist had left flashcards on the side table: house, spoon, daughter, pain. When I sat down, Mom reached for my hand. Her grip was still weak, but deliberate. Van, she said, and then stopped, frustrated. It's okay, I told her. Take your time. She swallowed. Her mouth trembled with effort. Van, keeps phone. I frowned. Her phone? Mom shook her head impatiently. My phone. That landed harder than it should have. Vanessa has your phone? Mom nodded. For updates? I asked. Another nod. Then, slowly, carefully, she said, people, money. I felt a chill move across my shoulders. You know about the fundraiser. She nodded again. Tears welled up in her eyes. Not dramatic tears, not Vanessa tears, just the helpless kind that come when your body won't move fast enough and your thoughts can't line up with your mouth. She pressed her lips together and forced the words out. Not for all this. Her hand twitched weakly toward the therapy bills on the table. She was trying to tell me something, and I knew it, but every word cost her effort, and effort wore her out fast. I leaned closer, lowering my voice as if the walls themselves might be listening. Mom, did Vanessa tell people you had more bills than you do? Mom stared at me. Then, after a long second, she gave one small, miserable nod. I felt my stomach drop. Did she ask before she did it? Mom's eyes filled. She gave the tiniest shrug, like she didn't know how to answer that without admitting she had been cornered. That told me enough. I stayed another hour, helping her with dinner, cutting the turkey into pieces small enough for her to manage, pretending nothing had changed. But inside, everything had changed. Until then, part of me had still tried to be fair. Maybe Vanessa was exaggerating. Maybe she was handling things sloppily. Maybe she believed the end justified the means. But Mom's face told a different story. Mom was ashamed, and my mother had never been ashamed of receiving real help. She had accepted casseroles when Dad died. She had accepted rides after cataract surgery. She had always thanked people, always carried herself with dignity. If Vanessa's fundraiser had been honest, Mom would have hated the attention, but she would not have looked like that. She looked like she had been used. That night, I went home and started digging. I wish I could tell you I found something dramatic right away. A luxury purchase, a transfer record, a stupid mistake that cracked the whole thing open. I didn't. What I found first was a wall. The fundraiser itself was easy to see. Vanessa had posted nearly every day, each update more polished than the last. Mom's fighting spirit, the soul-crushing limitations of insurance, the urgent need for adaptive equipment, private nursing support, transportation, nutritional therapies, and post-stroke home care. She had learned the language fast. She knew exactly which phrases made people feel both horrified and useful. But the actual movement of money was invisible. When I asked again for invoices, she sent me 3 screenshots. One was for a wheelchair deposit, one was for a shower bench, one was for a private speech consultation. Together, they didn't amount to even $4,000. At that point, the fundraiser had passed 51. I called her that same night. She answered, sounding irritated before I even spoke. I'm putting Lily to bed, her daughter, my niece. The universal shield she raised whenever she didn't want to answer for herself. You sent me $4,000 worth of expenses. And there's more than 50,000 raised. A sharp exhale. Daniel, I'm not wiring you a forensic accounting report every time someone donates $20. Where is the rest? In an account. What account? A family account. What family account, Vanessa? She went quiet for just long enough to tell me I had hit something real. Then she recovered. The one I opened to manage this, obviously. In your name? It had to be in someone's name. I stood in my kitchen gripping the edge of the counter so hard my knuckles hurt. The dishwasher hummed behind me. Rain tapped at the window over the sink. Everything in the room looked too ordinary for the conversation I was having. Tell me you haven't spent that money on anything unrelated to Mom. You are unbelievable. Tell me. I have expenses too, Daniel. That sentence hung in the air like smoke. For a second I could not speak. Then I said very quietly, what expenses? And Vanessa, instead of backtracking like an innocent person would have, actually sounded offended. Gas, time off work, childcare when I'm with Mom, the emotional labor of handling all of this while you swoop in and play auditor. I closed my eyes. There it was. Not just exaggeration, not just vanity, entitlement. She believed she deserved compensation, not reimbursement. Compensation. Payment for being the good daughter in public. Payment for photos from the rehab room. Payment for crafting the right tone of heartbreak online while strangers emptied their wallets. You did not tell donors they were paying you, I said. She laughed once, short and cold. Donors want Mom taken care of. I'm taking care of Mom. No, you're taking advantage of her. That was when her voice hardened completely. You know what your problem is, Daniel? You always needed things to be clean and provable. Nice, neat boxes. Life isn't like that. Mom needs help. I made sure she got it. If some of that money offsets what this has cost me, I can sleep at night. I can't. Then don't. She hung up on me. I did not sleep much after that. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mom trying to say not for all this. I saw Vanessa typing dramatic updates with one hand while moving donor money around with the other. I saw church ladies and old neighbors giving what they could because they believed they were helping a widow relearn how to walk. By morning, anger had burned through the last of my hesitation. I called the rehab billing department on my lunch break. They could not release everything to me without additional authorization, but they confirmed enough. Mom's inpatient stay was being billed through insurance and Medicare supplementation. There were copays. There were out-of-pocket rehab transportation estimates. There would eventually be home care costs if she came back to the house before she was fully stable. But nothing looked remotely close to the emergency Vanessa had described online. That same afternoon, I called the company that had delivered the wheelchair, paid in full through a combination of insurance and family contribution. The shower bench, bought with Mom's own HSA card. The private speech consultation, real but partially reimbursed and already covered. Piece by piece, the panic story Vanessa had sold to the internet started collapsing. Not because Mom needed no help, she did, but because Vanessa had turned "we will have expenses" into "we are drowning right now," and then treated the difference like her personal reward. I began taking notes, a legal pad at first, then a spreadsheet, date, claim, actual cost, evidence, missing amount. The habit from my job took over. Once the emotional fog lifted, the pattern became easier to see. Vanessa never lied in a way that could be disproven by one sentence. She lied like a skilled marketer. Inflate the threat, blur the timeline, use emotionally loaded language instead of verifiable numbers, gather sympathy faster than anyone gathers facts. And she was good at it. Too good. The fundraiser hit $63,000 the week before Thanksgiving. At rehab, people started mentioning it to me directly. A volunteer at the front desk squeezed my arm and said, "Your sister is such a warrior. I saw her update this morning. I donated after payday." A woman from Mom's church brought a crocheted blanket and whispered, "I'm so glad Vanessa is handling things. That poor child looks exhausted." I smiled through every one of those conversations until my face hurt. Then the Monday before Thanksgiving, I met the rehab nurse who changed everything. Her name was Tessa Lindholm. I had seen her before in passing, a woman in her late 40s, sandy hair always pinned up, clear blue eyes that missed nothing. She was one of the nurses Mom seemed to trust. Efficient, kind, not overly chatty, the sort of person who could reposition a patient, correct a medication schedule, and shut down nonsense in the same 10 seconds. I was helping Mom with a speech worksheet when Tessa came in to check vitals. Mom brightened when she saw her. That alone told me a lot. Tessa finished, adjusted the blanket over Mom's legs, then glanced at me. "Do you have a minute, Daniel?" Her tone was neutral, but something in it made my chest tighten. I followed her into the hallway. Rehab aides rolled a patient past us. Somewhere down the corridor, someone groaned through a physical therapy exercise. The place buzzed with the low-level struggle of people trying to rebuild their bodies one painful motion at a time. Tessa folded her arms. "I need to ask something delicate," she said. "Okay." She chose her words carefully. "Has your family hired private overnight support for your mother after discharge?" "No." "What about outside transportation or contracted home nursing?" "No." "Why?" A shadow crossed her face. "Because your sister has been telling staff and some patient families that your mother's outside care is already arranged through donated funds. She's been asking for copies of schedules, equipment estimates, and future treatment recommendations. More than once, she implied she needed them for donors." I felt my pulse throb in my throat. "She said that to staff?" Tessa nodded. "And to at least one other family in the therapy waiting room. I shut it down when I heard it the second time. A second time. Not accidental. Not grief fog. Not one poorly worded conversation. A system." "I need you to be honest with me," I said. "Do you think she's exploiting this?" Tessa looked at me for a long moment. When she answered, her voice was low. "I think your mother looks distressed every time fundraising is mentioned, and I think your sister is much more interested in documenting suffering than understanding care plans." The hallway seemed to go very still. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Tessa glanced toward Mom's room, then back at me. "Your mother also asked me last week if there was a polite way to tell people she didn't ask for all this money." I stared at her. My ears rang. "She said that?" Tessa nodded once. Her speech is limited, but yes, I understood her. I looked through the doorway then, at my mother sitting with her worksheet and blanket, waiting for me to come back. Small, tired, still trying to be polite even now, even while her own daughter paraded her pain online like inventory. Something in me turned hard. Not reckless, not loud, hard. "When is your family gathering for Thanksgiving?" Tessa asked. "Thursday, at Vanessa's." She hesitated, then said, "If your mother is going to be there for part of it, I'll be dropping off updated rehab discharge materials that afternoon anyway. I can bring copies of the actual billing summaries and care recommendations if needed." If needed. I almost laughed at how gently she put it. Because in that moment, standing under the fluorescent hallway lights, with my mother's real nurse offering quiet backup and my sister's lies finally taking shape around us, I knew exactly where this was heading. Thanksgiving was no longer a deadline. It was going to be a reckoning. I did not tell Vanessa I knew. That was the hardest part. For 2 days, I moved through work, through rehab visits, through the meaningless little rituals of late November with a second heartbeat under everything. Outwardly, I was calm. Inside, I was all edges. I kept seeing Mom's face. I kept hearing Vanessa's voice on the phone. If some of that money offsets what this has cost me, I can sleep at night. I couldn't. Tessa emailed me the billing summaries Wednesday evening from a secure hospital address after getting the proper release signed by Mom. Not rumors, not impressions. Documents, clean, ugly truth. Insurance coverage, actual patient responsibility, documented equipment costs, projected discharge needs. The total current out-of-pocket burden was serious, but nowhere near the emotional apocalypse Vanessa had sold online. Not even close. I printed everything. Then I printed screenshots of the fundraiser updates. The line about crippling unpaid hospital debt. The one about private nursing already arranged to keep Elaine safe. The one where Vanessa thanked donors for helping cover essential overnight rehab staff, as if we had some private recovery team waiting in the wings. Lie beside number. Performance beside fact. By midnight, my dining table looked like I was building a legal case, which, in a way, I was. My laptop cast a pale rectangle of light over the papers. Outside, wind rattled the last dead leaves against the gutters. I sat there with a mug of cold coffee and a pen in my hand, drawing circles around repeated phrases, noting every place Vanessa had turned possibility into certainty and uncertainty into tragedy. The fundraiser had crossed $72,000, and according to the account updates she accidentally left visible on one screenshot she had sent me, only a fraction had gone anywhere near Mom. Thanksgiving afternoon arrived gray and brittle. Vanessa's house smelled like sage, butter, and the kind of expensive candle that tries too hard to smell warm. She had gone full holiday performance mode. Cream table runner, gold napkin rings, tiny pumpkins and eucalyptus on the buffet, soft jazz playing from a speaker in the den. If you didn't know what she was, you would have thought she was holding the world together. Family had started arriving before I did. 2 cousins from Cincinnati, Aunt Joanne from Toledo. Some neighbors Vanessa had clearly invited to widen the audience. Her husband, Mark, moved through the house carrying serving dishes with the careful expression of a man who knew tension was in the walls but hadn't been told where it came from. Their daughter Lily ran circles through the hallway in glitter tights, blissfully unaware. Mom had been granted a short holiday pass from rehab. That part nearly broke me. Tessa had helped coordinate it, along with a transport service. Mom was dressed in a soft blue sweater, her hair carefully brushed back, her body tired but upright in the wheelchair. Vanessa had positioned her near the living room window with a knitted blanket over her knees. Like a centerpiece, nobody was allowed to name as one. People kept drifting over to touch her shoulder, squeeze her hand, tell her how brave she was. Mom smiled because she was too gracious not to. But every time someone mentioned the fundraiser, her smile thinned. I watched all of it. Vanessa floated from group to group with a wine glass in one hand and a tragic little shake of the head ready whenever anyone asked how things were going. It's been so hard. The system is a nightmare. We're just doing everything we can. Every line delivered with perfect fatigue. Then she saw me watching her. For a second, her face tightened. Just a second. Then she smiled and crossed the room. "You made it," she said brightly, kissing the air near my cheek. "Could you at least try not to look like you're attending a deposition?" I held her gaze. "Depends on the company." Her smile flickered, then returned. "Not today, Daniel." No, I thought. Today exactly. Dinner started late because Vanessa wanted everyone seated before carving the turkey. Of course she did. She wanted the room full. She wanted maximum witness count. Maybe not because she sensed what was coming, though I think part of her did, but because people like Vanessa need an audience even for their own lies. Mom was placed at the head of the table so everyone could see her. I nearly said something right then. The room glowed with candlelight. Silverware clinked. The smell of roasted turkey and sweet potatoes filled the air. Outside, dusk pressed against the windows. It should have been cozy. Instead, it felt stage-lit. Halfway through dinner, Cousin Rachel lifted her glass. "I just want to say," she began, "Vanessa, what you've done for Aunt Elaine is incredible. Truly. Not everyone would step up the way you have." There it was. Around the table, heads nodded. Aunt Joanne chimed in. "That fundraiser was such a blessing. I cried reading those updates." Vanessa lowered her eyes modestly. "I just did what anyone would do." I saw Mom look down at her plate. My jaw tightened so hard it hurt. Then the doorbell rang. Vanessa frowned. Who on earth? I already knew. Mark stood to answer it. The room hummed with the small confusion of interrupted ritual. A second later, he returned with Tessa, still in scrubs under a winter coat, carrying a large manila folder and a paper rehab bag with Mom's labeled supplies. The room went still. Tessa smiled politely, the kind of restrained professional smile that gives nothing away. "Sorry to interrupt," she said. "I'm Tessa Lindholm, one of Elaine's rehab nurses. I was dropping off updated discharge materials and some items that were left behind." Vanessa stood too quickly. Her chair scraped the floor. "Oh," she said, "you could have just left those with me." Tessa's eyes moved to Mom first. "Elaine asked that I bring them directly." That was the first crack. I stood. "Actually," I said, and every head turned toward me. "Since everyone's here, this might be a good time." Vanessa's face changed. The softness fell away. What was left underneath was cold and alert. "Daniel," she said quietly. A warning. I ignored it. I took the folder I had brought and placed it on the table beside the cranberry sauce and half-empty wine glasses. My pulse was hammering so hard I could feel it in my fingertips, but my voice, when it came, was steadier than I expected. For the last 2 months, Vanessa has been running a fundraiser in Mom's name. She told people the money was urgently needed for crushing medical debt, private rehab care, nursing support, and immediate uncovered costs. Aunt Joanne blinked. "Well, yes," I looked at Vanessa. "She also told me she would show me where the money was going by Thanksgiving." Silence spread across the table like spilled oil. Vanessa gave a brittle little laugh. "You are not doing this now." "Yes," I said, "I am." I opened the folder and pulled out the billing summaries first. These are Mom's actual rehab and treatment numbers. They're real, they're serious, but they are not what Vanessa claimed online. Vanessa's voice sharpened. "Those are partials. They don't include future." I raised a hand. "They include actual current patient responsibility, projected discharge needs, covered equipment, and documented private consults. They do not show the catastrophic debt you described. They do not show private nursing already in place. They do not show overnight rehab staffing being paid through donor support, because that didn't happen." Rachel looked from me to Vanessa, confused. "What are you saying?" I pulled out the fundraiser printouts. "I'm saying Vanessa exaggerated Mom's condition and costs to raise more money, and when I asked where the money went, she admitted some of it had offset what this had cost her." That landed like a dropped glass. Mark turned to his wife so slowly it made my skin prickle. "Vanessa?" She stood there breathing hard, color rising in her face. "Oh, please," she snapped. "You all have no idea what I've done. The hours, the driving, the childcare, the stress." Tessa spoke then, calm and precise. "Donors were told they were funding Elaine's care," she said, "not compensating a family member." Vanessa whipped toward her. "You need to stay in your lane." "My lane," Tessa said, still calm, "is patient welfare. And your mother was distressed when fundraising was discussed. She also told me she did not ask for all of this." Every eye in the room shifted to Mom. Mom's hands were trembling in her lap. Her mouth worked for a second. You could see the effort it took just to gather one sentence. The whole table leaned into the silence. Finally, painfully, she said, "Too much lying." Vanessa actually flinched. I will never forget that. Not because it was dramatic. It wasn't. It was small, human. A daughter hearing the one voice she had been using finally pushed back. Mark looked sick. "How much?" he asked. Vanessa said nothing. "How much, Vanessa?" Her chin lifted. "I don't know the exact number off the top of my head." I slid one last printed page across the table. $72,418 as of this morning. Aunt Joanne put a hand over her mouth. I continued, because once I started, I couldn't stop. Known direct costs paid from that money account for less than $15,000. Some expenses were already covered through insurance, Mom's HSA, or direct payment. Vanessa opened the account in her own name. She did not provide transparent accounting. She did not tell donors she was using any portion for herself. Mark stared at her as if he had never seen her before. "Tell me that's not true." Vanessa's eyes darted around the table, searching for sympathy, for somebody gullible enough to hand her a softer interpretation. But the room had changed. The warmth was gone. Even the candles seemed harsh now. "I was holding it," she said finally, "for future care." "Then why dodge every question?" I asked. "Because you were attacking me. Because you knew." Her composure cracked all at once. "You think I knew?" she shot back. Her voice rose, sharp and ugly now. "I was the one doing everything while you visited with your little spreadsheets and your concerned face routine. I was there every day. I took the calls, I managed the updates, I held Mom when she cried, and yes, I used some of the money, because this destroyed my life too." Lily, somewhere in the hallway, laughed at something on television. The sound was surreal. Vanessa kept going, words spilling faster now. "None of you helped enough. None of you understand what it costs to be the responsible one. Everyone sent prayers and hearts and casseroles and expected me to carry the real weight. So yes, I made sure I wasn't the only one paying for it. By lying in Mom's name," I said, her face twisted. "By surviving." Mom made a sound then, half sob, half breath. Everyone turned. Tears were running down her face. She looked not furious, not theatrical, just wounded in the deepest possible way. Tessa moved to her side immediately, crouching beside the wheelchair. Mom reached for my hand instead. That almost undid me. I took it. Vanessa saw that, and for the first time all evening, I think she realized she had truly lost the room. Mark pushed his chair back. "Did you spend donor money on us?" he asked quietly. She didn't answer. "Did you?" Her silence was answer enough. He closed his eyes for a second, then said, "I want access to that account tonight." The dinner was over after that, though technically nobody announced it. People just came apart. Rachel started clearing plates because she didn't know what else to do with her hands. Aunt Joanne went into the den and cried quietly. One neighbor slipped out the front door without saying goodbye. Another muttered that donors needed to be told the truth. Vanessa stood in the dining room amid the wreckage of her own performance, still trying to gather scraps of dignity around herself. I didn't yell. I didn't need to. I told her she had 48 hours to provide full accounting and begin arranging donor reimbursements for anyone who wanted one, along with a corrected public statement. If she didn't, I would take everything I had to an attorney and to the platform directly. She looked at me with raw hatred. "You'd humiliate your own sister?" I looked at my mother, still crying softly in her wheelchair. "You already did that to yourself." Mom went back to rehab that night instead of staying for pie like Vanessa had planned. I rode in the transport van beside her. Tessa followed in her own car. The streets were dark and wet, Thanksgiving lights glowing in windows as we passed. Mom fell asleep halfway there, one hand still wrapped around mine. The aftermath was uglier than the confrontation. Vanessa posted a vague statement 2 days later about miscommunications during a time of extraordinary stress. It did not go well. Too many people had been at that table. Too many had seen the documents. Mark forced full access to the account and discovered exactly what I suspected: transfers for personal credit card payments, retail purchases, salon charges, a weekend hotel bill she labeled caregiver decompression. Disgusting little thefts hidden inside a tragedy. Eventually, after legal pressure and platform intervention, a portion of the unused money was returned or redirected into a properly documented trust for Mom's actual ongoing care. Some donors declined refunds and asked that it remain for Elaine's benefit. Those people restored a little of my faith in the world. Vanessa and Mark separated 6 months later. Mom never fully forgave her. I don't think she ever could. As for me, I learned something I wish I had learned younger. Family betrayal rarely begins with one giant act. It starts with tiny permissions, a little exaggeration, a little entitlement, a little story told in the name of love. And if no one stops it, the lie grows until it is feeding on the very person it claims to save. Mom improved slowly, not perfectly, but enough to come home with real support, real equipment, and real decisions made in daylight instead of behind donation buttons. She still spoke carefully. She still got tired easily. But the first time she made her own coffee again, using that stubborn left hand and glaring at me for hovering too close, I almost cried. Sometimes justice is loud. Sometimes it arrives in a dining room full of witnesses. And sometimes it walks in wearing scrubs, carrying receipts, and finally gives the truth a chair at the table.